ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्दर्श्या ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मायं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुन् श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवं च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं स्वावधूतं परिजनाश्रायितं कृष्ण चैतन्यदेवं सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितं हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपीश गोपिका कान्ता राधा माता नमोस्तुते सप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Shashwin, for the wonderful Mangalacharan recital. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Danvat Pranam. Please accept our humble obeisances from everybody in this group, Prabhuji, who have joined and are about to join. I would also like to welcome Priya Darshini Devi Dasi. Thank you, Mataji, for joining in. We have this Sangha that goes on every day, even on weekends. So we do one text every day. We started 2 years ago and we are almost at completion now. And we are reading the Bhagavad Gita as it is. We are on chapter 18. Chapter 18 is the perfection of renunciation. And today we are doing the most important text 66. And we are so fortunate that we have you, Prabhuji, to guide us through this and explain the text 66. So I hand over to you, Prabhuji, but if you wanted us to read anything, kindly let us know. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. And thank you so much for this opportunity to facilitate some discussion on this amazing verse. Thank you, Shashwin Prabhu, for the lovely Mangalacharan. I think if I could have even a fraction of the devotion of Shashwin Prabhu, then I'd be very happy, in my place in Krishna consciousness. And it's always a highlight for me to hear him recite the Mangalacharan. So thank you very much. So I'll start by just the invocation prayer and recite the verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading, as Anji said, chapter 18, text 66, a very, very famous verse. Sarva dharma parityajan mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarve papebhyo mokshayishyami ma suchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Just one more time. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. So this is such an important and wonderful verse as we're studying and we're taught in Bhakti Shastri and various courses that you get taught at the temple. This is one of the key verses that you must learn. I'm not really qualified to speak on such an amazing verse, but I'm just asking for everyone's blessings, all the devotees, that I can say something that may be of benefit. So there's two words in here which I wanted to focus on this verse. One is fear. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we perhaps have fear in our day-to-day lives, and then the other word I wish to focus on is surrender. So how we can overcome this fear by surrendering to Krishna, and the ways in which we can do that, which there's many ways, but I'm going to focus on cultivating knowledge, giving up certain things, especially our anarthas, for Krishna, and telling others about Krishna. So those two things. So firstly, on fear itself. So we know that to accept a material body and to live in the material world means suffering. There's no escaping it. There's earlier on in the Gita, Krishna says to Arjun, Abrahma bhuvana loka punar avartino jana mamupteya tukonteya punar janmana vidyate. Of all the planets in the material universe, from the highest, Brahmaloka, down to the lowest, Pritaloka, all are places of misery, wherein repeated birth and death takes place. But those who achieve Mayabodh, O son of Kunti, never take birth again. So Krishna is saying here that even in the highest planets in the material world, there's still places of misery. So, everyone has their own favorite food. I'd like you all to just think about, first of all, your favorite food, whatever that might be. For mine, I really like paneer. I'm a big fan of paneer. So to think about the best dish, the time you've had the most amazing dish served to you of your favorite food, and think how much you're relishing that. Now, compared to what's in the heavenly planets, that is nothing. If you go to the heavenly planets, the such as Brahmaloka, the sense gratification there is on another level. So why these places with such opulence and such amazing different ways to enjoy, why are they still places of misery? And so as this wonderful verse Krishna has explained, that because they're still, regardless of, even though people live longer in the heavenly planets, they're still subject to birth, death, old age, and disease. So here we can see that there's one person in particular who is very, very fearful, constantly living in anxiety. And so I'd like to cite the example of Kamsa. So Kamsa, as you may know, was the uncle of Krishna. So before Krishna was born, it was prophesied on the wedding of his sister Devaki that Devaki's son would kill him. So as such, he was so overcome by fear that he takes custody of his own relative, and put her and her husband in prison, and killed each of her children as they were born. But as you may know, the pastime that in fact Krishna was taken away and taken under the care of Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj. But constantly, Kamsa, as Krishna was growing up, constantly he's in anxiety. He could not sleep sometimes. He's in so much anxiety, thinking, oh, Krishna's going to kill me. Krishna. It's actually said that he received a lot of benefit because he was constantly thinking of Krishna, even in the wrong way. But like this, he was still in very much anxiety, constantly worrying about essentially dying. Now, we may not be thinking, we may have not been prophesied that someone is coming to kill us. And in fact, it's a great benediction to be killed by Krishna. But we do suffer from anxiety, and we're constantly in fear in different ways. And it's important for us to examine in which ways we can possibly be living in fear. So perhaps we're fearful of our health, that our health is going to go. We've had some health complications, and we're worried about what's going to happen in the future to us. Perhaps we're worried about the health of a loved one, and we're worried about we're fearful of losing them, and perhaps we're fearful of the pain we'll experience upon that separation. Perhaps we're fearful of losing our job, and times are difficult, and so much depends on us, especially if we have many dependents, and if we lose our livelihood, how are we going to support ourselves? How are we going to support those around us? So there's so many things to be fearful of. And Prabhupada uses some interesting examples of how a materialistic person, he compares them to different types of animals. So first, one example is he compares a materialistic person to a camel. And the reason Prabhupada talks about the camel is because one habit of a camel is that it likes to chew thorns. So as a camel is chewing thorns, it will also get cuts inside its mouth and start even consuming its own blood. And it won't even realize that the moisture in its mouth is its own blood and is there it's trying to enjoy. So the reason Prabhupada gives this example is that a camel, just like a camel, we can try and exploit and enjoy the material energy, but we're only hurting ourselves in the process. So unfortunately, there's no way to enjoy the material energy without damaging ourselves. So like this, and a reason in relation to fear, if we can examine which ways we're trying to achieve something from the material world, we're trying to achieve more and more, and instead if we can be satisfied with just enough. He then compares people who are constantly working to asses. So the reason is an ass or a donkey works incredibly hard. But it works hard. An ass will even, a trait of an ass or a donkey is that it will get kicked by the female species. It will even get kicked by the female species, but it will still endeavor to enjoy with the, and work incredibly hard without direction, without question. So we can see in today's day and age, people work incredibly hard constantly. And this is often related to fear as well, that I must work hard, I must earn more money, I must provide for myself. And it is said that actually in the olden days, in feudal times in England, in the UK, peasants were required to work approximately 200 hours a year, I'm going to say. So they'd still be finished work by sort of mid-afternoon, but that was considered slave labor back then. So you can imagine now it's not uncommon for people to work 12 hours a day. And so which leaves very little time for concentrating on spiritual activities and self-realization. And then finally, the example is given that people can also be like dogs. And I remember once a big thing in the UK is chips. So we eat a lot of I don't know if you call them French fries or chips. And I remember as a teenager, I had like a big bag of chips that I was eating on the street with my friends. And then I had like so many. And then a dog owner came and it was too much for us. We were going to throw it away. And an owner came with his dog and said, "Oh, my dog will eat that." And as soon as literally we put it down, the dog within 30 seconds had finished it all. And why do I bring this up is because unlike humans, if someone puts a plate in front of us, we will kind of have the ability to self-restrain. But a dog, it cannot control itself. You put food in front of a dog and it will immediately consume it. But unfortunately, in this era of Kali Yuga, we're so driven by sense gratification, and more we can see people have that don't have control. So then Krishna is saying in this verse, abandon all varieties of religion. Sarva dharma parityajan. So Krishna is saying throughout the Gita, he talks about dharma, talks about the various areas of dharma, but now he's saying give up all varieties of religion. So what is he trying to say here? What does he mean by this? Because he spent so many wonderful verses, as we discussed throughout the Gita, discussing dharma. But here actually, if we actually explore this, he's not saying give up dharma. He's actually saying elevate one's dharma. So Prabhupada actually explains many times that dharma, another word for it, can mean constitutional position. Constitutional position. So he gives the example that a chili, for example, its constitutional, its dharma is to be hot, is to be spicy. So if you added some chilies to a dish and suddenly they tasted sweet, then the chili is not fulfilling its dharma, because it should be spicy, not sweet. In the same way, if we added some sugar and the sugar turned out to be bitter, the sugar is not fulfilling its constitutional position of being sweet. But the constitutional position of a human being is to self-realize. So we're not fulfilling our dharma there. But then, so is Krishna saying here that we should give up our duties? So earlier in the Gita, Arjun actually has proposed this, and he wants to give up his duty and just go and become a sannyas and meditate in the forest. And I remember a long time ago, this was probably 2015, I had the great privilege to hear from a great Maharaj, His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj. Is based generally in India, but he does travel around the country, and he was in the UK. And I was very new at the time, and I've been working in IT for many years, very dissatisfied. And I asked Maharaj, I said, Maharaj, Krishna had Arjun to tell him what to do, but I work in IT and I don't really like it, so what should I do, with my life? And at least Arjun had Krishna directly. And so Maharaj explained that we all still have our duty, our specific material duty, but every single living entity, especially a human being, has a spiritual duty to elevate, and that's regardless of what specific material duties we have. So alongside our material duties, if we're well situated, we can become well situated within our varna, so within our particular duty which suits us, not over-endeavoring like Prabhupada talks about the asses, but just doing enough to maintain our situation. And from that point, it can be used as a platform. But we must, our constitutional position is to endeavor for self-realization. And as this is something which separates us from animals. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a wonderful verse where Krishna, so whereas it's explained that one was indebted in so many ways. So we're indebted to our parents, we're indebted to the forefathers, we're indebted to the devas who provide so many things, like Indra, etc., is in control of the weather, so many things. Even as devotees, they still worship Ganesh, especially during weddings. So we're indebted to so many people. But one who surrenders unto Krishna, all his debts are removed. So this is why Krishna is saying, give up all other forms of religion, give up all these other other rituals, and just surrender unto me. And by doing that, because ultimately all the devas, even all the even our parents, everyone, all they're getting their facility, who they're getting that from? They're getting it from Krishna. So if we can surrender unto Krishna, our ultimate father, who's providing everything for everyone, then all our debts are written off, you know. So so this is what I want to talk about with regards to kind of this notion of fear. How it's good to examine how we are kind of acting out of fear in life, where we're over endeavoring. Perhaps we can kind of scale that back and think about, okay, how can I just do enough to achieve my maintain my material situation, and then ultimately, now I'm going to talk a little bit about this process of, okay, so how to surrender unto Krishna. And one such amazing example of someone who was truly a surrendered soul to Krishna was Prahlad Maharaj. So there's so many lessons to be learned from Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj, he was born to a demon. But as he was born to as he was in the womb of his mother, it happened to actually, while he was in the womb, there was a war going on between the devas and the demons. And as such, his mother happened to be in the captive of Lord Indra. And as such, Narad Muni had an audience with Narad Muni. As such, Narad Muni preached to Prahlad Maharaj in the womb. So once Prahlad Maharaj was born, he immediately was like a self-realized soul, and all his peers, he was only 5 years old, all his peers, they wanted to play and they wanted to enjoy. And in fact, his father, Hiranyakashipu, his name literally means soft bed and gold. So these were his motto in life, just to enjoy himself, have comfortable living situation, and craving after money, so gold and soft bed. So he's preaching to his peers, no, we must surrender to Krishna. And this word got back to Hiranyakashipu that he'd been spreading. Now, Hiranyakashipu was very puffed up, very much he's described as an atheist, and very much believes in his own power, thinks himself almost as God. And as you may well be aware, Hiranyakashipu, he had several boons granted to him by Lord Brahma. He asked actually to be immortal, but Lord Brahma can't grant this. So instead, he had various boons, such as he could not be killed in the day or the night. He could not be killed on the earth or in the sky. He could not be killed by man or by a beast, and so forth like this, many boons. So he thought himself invincible. And he became enraged that Prahlad Maharaj was preaching. So he brought him in front of him. And instead, Prahlad Maharaj starts preaching to his own father and telling him that instead of just engaging so much in sense gratification and enjoyment and just trying to enjoy so much, enjoy, he should look to take Vanapras and surrender and focus on surrendering into the Supreme Lord. Upon this, obviously, Prahlad Maharaj, Hiranyakashipu, very proud individual, thinking himself like God, he became enraged, and instead he treated his son so badly. He tried to kill him many times. So he threw Prahlad Maharaj off a cliff. But again, Prahlad Maharaj, a surrendered soul unto Krishna, just simply surrendered unto the Lord his fate, and again was saved by Krishna. He was plunged into boiling water. He was thrown in a snowstorm, thrown in a hurricane. He was thrown in a pit of snakes even. Each time he surrendered unto the Lord, and was saved every single time. And finally, he was also even Hiranyakashipu got a huge elephant to crush Prahlad Maharaj. Instead, the elephant picked up Prahlad Maharaj and took him for a ride. Upon seeing all of this, Hiranyakashipu was so angry and raged, tried to kill Prahlad Maharaj with his own hands by flinging him to the floor. But again, Prahlad Maharaj was saved. So Hiranyakashipu says to him, where do you get your power from? And Prahlad Maharaj states to Hiranyakashipu that I get my power from the same place you do, from God, from Krishna. And so enraged, he says, where is your God? Where is Krishna? He said, well, he's everywhere, even here, and smashes a pillar, up in which point the Lord appears as Lord Nrsingadev, and they engage in a fight. And of course, Lord Nrsingadev kills Hiranyakashipu by placing him on his lap and piercing him with his claws. So by this, he overcame all the boons of Hiranyakashipu, and showing that God is above any material power that can be achieved. And it's said that if God wants to save you, no one can hurt you. But if God wants to kill you, no one can save you. And here we can see he was killed at sunset, so neither night nor day. He was killed by Lord Nrsingadev, who was neither man nor beast. And he was killed not by weapons, but by the claws of Lord Nrsingadev. So what does this relate to surrendering? How can we learn from this pastime? And why did I talk about this? Well, it's unlikely that any of us are going to be thrown in a pit of snakes anytime soon. It's unlikely that we are going to be thrown off a cliff. And it's unlikely that someone's going to bring an elephant to crush us under the hoof. But we are going to face difficulties in life. It is likely that at some point in our lives, we are going to face health difficulties. It is likely at some point in our lives, someone around us would face health difficulties. It is likely that we may face difficulties within our profession or trying to provide. So the 3 points I wanted to talk about, which could help us during these times of difficulty and many, many difficulties. This world is unfortunately, we're always going to face some kind of difficulty. Is one, cultivate knowledge and inquire from a guru. Give up our anarthas to Krishna. And the third one is tell others about Krishna. So first of all, cultivate knowledge. So Prahlad Maharaj, he actually cultivated knowledge, and he was hearing intently in the womb of from a bona fide guru, Narad Muni. So in this way, he'd cultivated knowledge. And even a wonderful example is Arjun, of course. So he surrenders to Krishna. Earlier in the Gita, he says, now I'm a soul surrendered to you, please instruct me. So Prabhupada says that we should all be asking the questions, first of all, what is Krishna? Then what is my relationship to Krishna? And what is my duty to Krishna? And Krishna explains earlier in the Gita that it's so important to surrender to a bona fide guru. And through doing this, and through attaining this knowledge and slowly asking questions, continually asking questions within a submissive way, we can remove all these doubts. And then when we face these difficulties in life, and we're facing a lot of fear, this is one way, as we've cultivated this knowledge, that it can help us during these times of difficulty, to realize that this material world, difficulties are going to come. But if we have this transcendental knowledge, we remain fixed in this knowledge, we'll be in a better place to handle them. You know, at one of the best universities of the world, it's in America, it's called Harvard University. I'm sure many of you have heard of Harvard University. And at Harvard University, they did a survey with 1,000 students. And they asked the students to rank these 3 questions in order of importance. So they asked them, first of all, what will my future career look like? That's one question. Second question, what will my future partner look like? And the third question is, what is the purpose of my life? So job, partner, and life. And they did a survey amongst 1,000 students, which of these 3 questions is the most important? And there's a huge majority, which said that the most important question in life is, what is the purpose of my life? So here Prabhupada is saying it's so important to find out what is the purpose of our lives. But if we look at the reality, even though so many intellectuals will say, yes, it's important to find out the purpose, if we even look at our own lives and say, how much time do we actually spend finding out what is the purpose of life, cultivating this knowledge of self-realization, and instead, how much time do we focus on cultivating, working so hard to build a career, to earn money? And I know myself, coming from an Indian background, for many, many years before I got married, so much pressure to find a partner and thinking about that, so much energy, but yet not so much energy on cultivating and finding out the purpose of life. So again, so important to cultivate knowledge, and this will help us in the process of surrender. The second point I was going to make was giving up anarthas and just giving up certain things for Krishna. So I was listening to a class a few weeks ago by a wonderful devotee by the name of Amarendra Prabhu, and he was telling a true story about this drug dealer. So this drug dealer, he was on the run from the police. So, and at the same time he was on the run from the police and they were chasing him, there happened to be a huge Harinam, so a huge procession of devotees singing and dancing in the road. So he thought, oh, I can hide amongst the devotees, the police won't see me, and then once the police leave, I can run away. So he slowly went into the procession of the devotees and hiding, and he could see the police were out and about. But then as he tried to leave the procession, the devotees, obviously very merciful, said, hey, what are you doing? Chant Hare Krishna. So he tried to exit from the right, and the devotee elbow said, no, what are you doing? Chant Hare Krishna. Then he tries to exit from the left. The devotee says, no, what are you doing? Stay there, chant Hare Krishna. Then he tries to exit from the front, and the devotee says, no, what are you doing? Chant Hare Krishna. So like this, he's just chanting Hare Krishna all the way to the temple. Then he can see the cops are still following this procession, thing. Maybe this drug dealer is hiding inside this procession of Hare Krishnas. So the cops followed to the temple. So he said, oh, no, I have to go inside the temple. So he goes to the temple and tells he says, okay, I'm going to have to hide here. So he tells the temple president, he says, Hare Krishna, I want to join you. So the temple president is delighted to think, wow, so enthusiastic in Krishna consciousness, he's joined. So then, but he didn't know what was in store for him. So he joins, he moves into the temple, and he thinks, okay, now I can relax, and I'll just stay here for a few days and then leave. But instead, he's woken up at 3:30 in the morning to go to Mangal Arati, which is at 4:30, and there's a long queue. So the queue is there. He gets finally to the queue, and there's only one bathroom. He enters the bathroom, and he's showering, and the water is cold. And he was thinking, there's such a long queue, it must be a really nice bathroom. But no, the water was cold. So he's showering, he's very tired. And instead, people knocking on and said, hey, hurry up, you have to be there for Mangal Arati. So he quickly, there's so many people knocking, so he quickly hurries up and goes to Mangal Arati, and he's feeling very disorientated. And then he can see people swaying, and they call it the Swami step in Mangal Arati. So people are swaying in the morning like this. So then he's swaying and he's feeling dizzy. And then they sit down and they start doing the Nrsingadev prayers. And everyone's singing, and they're singing in front of a big picture of a half man, half lion, ferocious, ripping someone apart. So he's feeling quite afraid and thinking, he asked someone, well, what is this? And he said, and the devotee says, see that man on the lap? He said, that's what will happen to you if you don't sing. So sing loudly. So he starts singing the Nrsingadev prayers. And then there's Tulsi Arati, and he sees people are walking around this plant. And so he follows, and he says, what do you do here? And he says, keep walking. And he's walking so much, he starts feeling dizzy and faint. Then finally people sit down. It's japa time now. So people will chant for 2 hours, and he can see people chanting. And he can, then he sees that people have got their hands in a bag, but they're pointing. and he can see, he becomes paranoid, thinks everyone's pointing at him. And then so he asks, what is everyone doing here? And one devotee says, they're all pointing at you, saying you're the only one not chanting. So what he does, he gets an empty bead bag, puts his hand in it, because he doesn't want to be caught, puts his hand in the bead bag, and starts walking around and saying, no, it's you, you. And he's just pointing to everyone with an empty bead bag. Then he's so tired at this point. And then obviously there's Guru Puja, and finally he gets time to sleep because it was Srimad Bhagavatam class. So the class goes on, and then finally, what he's been waiting for, think, okay, now I can have some prasad, it's breakfast, and I can go to sleep. But then he has breakfast and he's satisfied, very nice prasad, and he thinks, now I can rest. But no, the temple president grabs him, says, no, right, here's some books, here's Mridanga, you go out on the street, chant Hare Krishna, and do book distribution for 12 hours. He's like, oh, Krishna. But he can't do it, he can't escape, because if he doesn't stay within the temple, he'll get found out by the cops. So instead, he does this, and this goes on for 6 months. After 6 months, he's had enough. He's had too much. He's thinking, this is too much for me. I need to come clean here. So he goes to the temple president and says, I have a confession to make. I'm very sorry. I'm a drug dealer, actually. I came here just to hide from the cops, but now I want to surrender to Krishna. So the temple president says, you're a drug dealer. My reputation is at stake here. I've been harboring a criminal, So before you surrender to Krishna, you should surrender to the cops. So go. So like this, he surrenders to the cops. He's arrested and he ends up in court. And the judge says to him, so what have you been doing in the past 6 months? And he says, well, first I have to wake up at 3:30 and I'm in the shower with knocks on the door. And then the judge says, then what do you do? He says, then I'm swaying until I'm dizzy. And then he says, then what do you do? He says, then I sing the prayers while being scared. He said, then what you do? I walk around a plant until I'm dizzy. He said, and then what do you do? He says, I put my hand in an empty bead bag and point for 2 hours. And he says, and then what do you do? He says, I dance and then I sit in a boring class. He says, and then what do you do? He says, I walk on the street for 12 hours distributing Bhagavad Gita. And so the judge says, you know what? Let him go. His life in the temple is more tougher than it will be in prison anyway. But like this, then this criminal actually becomes a devotee, and he actually has given class and things like that and talked about his experience. So we can see here from this example that this person, he surrendered his bad habits. He actually took the association of devotees and gave up his bad habits for Krishna. Now, this is an extreme example. I would imagine that no one on the Sangha here is a drug dealer, but I'm sure we may have some bad habits, some things, some ways of thinking that we can give up for Krishna. One small example I'd like to give for my own life is here at our temple, Bhaktivedanta Mana, for Janmashtami, we have a really huge festival, especially before the pandemic. And we'd have over 2 days, 80,000 visitors would come. And so often one of my services is I'll act in the plays. So we were doing a play for on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And we were doing the play, and so I was feeling like, oh, we must do a good job of this play. It must look good. We must do a good service, because many important devotees, important even politicians, even some Maharajas were coming to see our play. And during the play, everything was going wrong. So during the first showing, some of the actors, they'd forgotten their lines, and they had their phone on stage and were reading in front of the audience. And then I didn't have sound, and I was saying my lines, and people at the audience were shouting, "We can't hear you!" So I was having to shout my lines as loud as I could. And then in one of the showings, we had a screen which would have backgrounds, and this whole screen fell down in the middle of the play. And myself and all the cast members were feeling very, very embarrassed. And I was thinking, this couldn't be worse. Many of us wanted to just leave. We found it so embarrassing. And then we had a short break, so we tend to do one play every hour. But then at one point we managed to have a 2-hour gap in between the next showing. And then so I just started chanting. And then I said to myself, you know what, Krishna, I've realized actually I'm very attached to giving a good performance and looking good. And instead I surrender looking good to you. You know, I surrender this. I don't want to look good. I just want to do a nice service for you. And if the play is meant to be awful, then it will be awful. That's not for me. I'm just going to do my best. I kid you not, straight after that, sound worked perfectly. The actors who couldn't remember their lines, they left. So we cut down the play a little bit. All the technology worked fine. And the audience were very, very enthusiastic, laughing, clapping, everything. And everything went perfectly. So in these little moments throughout the day, if we can give up give up our wanting something, we're always trying to exploit, always wanting something for ourselves. Instead, just do our duty, but give up, surrender to Krishna, even just by little things like I did there. And slowly, slowly, this will help us fully surrender into Krishna if we can do this on a day-to-day basis. And the final point I want to make is tell others about Krishna in our own words. So here we can see Prahlad Maharaj is telling his peers all about Krishna, surrender unto Krishna. Why is this so important? Well, earlier in the Gita, Krishna says and actually in a few verses, Krishna says one who reveals this supreme science to others is very dear to him. Also, by telling others about Krishna in our own words, this philosophy becomes cemented within ourselves. It's said that we remember maybe about 5%, even less of what we read, maybe 10% of what we revisit, but we remember 50% or more of what we teach others. So by telling others about Krishna, we're able to remember about Krishna, about his pastimes. And sometimes we may think, oh, what do I know about Krishna? I'm only a junior, devotee. To be honest, sometimes I feel like I've got nothing to say to all of you. I'm very much junior. There's many more senior devotees on the call here. But then I remember when I was in the ashram, and then we were traveling around India. We were in Mayapur, and I was very nervous because I've been told that as soon as I get back to the temple, I'll have to start giving Bhagavad Gita classes in the temple. And Satyananda Karuna Prabhu, he's given a class for yourselves. I approached him and he said, Prabhu, he said, it doesn't, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So as long as we can show compassion for others, then. And then I also asked this question to Gaurgopal Prabhu, who I had the privilege of staying in Chaupati Ashram and got to speak with Gaurgopal Prabhu, and he'd look after me while I was in the temple. And he said to me, Prabhu, just say what you know. So whatever little we know about Krishna, whatever little we understand, share that with others. And through that, it'll help us to think about Krishna. And I'd like to end with, there's a wonderful verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 3rd canto, which says, engaged constantly in chanting and hear about me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sadhus do not suffer from material miseries because they're always filled with thoughts of my pastime and activities. So here we're always going to face material miseries. We're always going to face difficulties. But if we can engage in much about hearing about Krishna, about talking about Krishna, about chanting Krishna, and cultivate this knowledge and surrender in each little moment, whatever capacity we can, we'll be able to overcome these material miseries and go back home, back to Godhead. So in closing, I'd just like to say that in practicing of Krishna consciousness doesn't mean that we'll an easy life. As I've stated before, that often we can see so many examples of devotees, Prahlad Maharaj tortured by his father. So practicing Krishna consciousness doesn't mean an easy life, but Krishna gives us these difficulties as almost like a medium for us to come closer to him. And secondly, before I came to Krishna consciousness, I like to listen to many motivational talks. And if you think about times when we're motivated by a story, we may be not so motivated by someone who said, yes, they came from a family of millionaires or royalty, and then they started a business with the money they already had and became successful. Not so motivating, but someone who overcame so many difficulties. Maybe they were homeless, maybe they lost someone close to them, and they overcame so many difficulties in life and yet achieved success. This is what really motivates us and also glorifies that person. So this is what Krishna likes to do to him as his devotees. And through these difficulties, the devotee is actually able to really shine, and we also take inspiration from them as well. So those are just a few thoughts on the conception of, on this notion of fear and on surrendering to Krishna. So I'd now perhaps like to open up for any comments, corrections, or questions. And thank you very much for your kind attention, Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for this nectar that you have imparted to us about fear and how to surrender. And I mean, in the last verse also there was surrender, and that was the essence, and that is the essence of Gita, and that's the confidential knowledge. And I really like the point on getting the baby steps to surrender. So, I mean, we all think, oh, one day we'll just surrender to Krishna, but now we know that we do small baby steps and then it'll come. So thank you very much. That is what I really loved about it, and the purpose of my life question. And we are asked that, but whenever we are asked that, we never know. And people don't think about, even, I mean, I teach in the university, so even among our colleagues, when we discuss, we never think about what our purpose is. So thank you very much for giving us that question as well. I'll open the session up for questions or any other comments. Are there any other questions? Any questions for Prabhuji? Any comments? Yes, Priya Govind Das, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Kindly unmute and ask a question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam.
Yes,
Hare Krishna,
Prabhuji.
Prabhu.
We can
My
hear you.
question is, why is it so difficult for the jivas or the jivatmas to surrender? Why is it so difficult for them to surrender, yet they undergo so much suffering? Yet still, they are still suffering, despite understanding that by surrender, then they can set themselves free from this cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease.
Oh, very, very nice question. So just to repeat, Prabhuji, make sure I understand that. Why is it that people find it so difficult to surrender, even though we're suffering so much? Why is it so difficult for the jiva, the individual soul, to surrender? So a very profound question, and my thoughts on this are that it's suffering, but it's familiar suffering. So we're conditioned not by just this life, but many, 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 many lifetimes. And the reason why we've actually come to the material world is to enjoy without Krishna, and in some ways maybe even be God on some level. So the process of Krishna consciousness, it said it's a simple process, difficult application. And the reason is because for so long, imagine you've been doing something for so long, not just this lifetime, many, many lifetimes. We're so used to doing something. And there's this saying, all habits die hard. So we can see, for example, so I myself, I'm a trainee counselor, and we can see people, they have many, many bad habits, or they may be in bad relationships and things like that. So a good example is relationships. I've seen many, many times you can see someone and think, why are they in a relationship with this person? And then you can explore that actually the reason they're in that bad relationship is because it's familiar, because it reminds them of perhaps their childhood and things. So in the same way, even though we're suffering, we have this notion that we almost this inherent belief that somehow the material energy, despite being told again and again and suffering again and again, we somehow cling to this belief that somehow we're going to get something from the material energy. So instead, but it's difficult to surrender because the process of bhakti is actually generally gradual. So it's a gradual process of surrender. It's not like generally for some devotees, they can surrender immediately to Krishna. And Prabhupada actually says in one famous lecture, it can take 1 minute to give up everything. But generally speaking, this process is gradual. So we work on it gradually, step by step, and understand, okay, you know, every small moment we can see, every day we can maybe surrender one small thing to Krishna. Say, okay, so maybe, for example, I'm getting in arguments from people. So from now on, Krishna, I'm going to surrender my anger onto you. And through this way, we can cultivate slowly faith. So we may not have any philosophical doubts. In fact, I asked this question in a class, a Srimad Bhagavatam class at the temple. And someone said, the speaker said to me, a wonderful speaker, Her Grace Chiti Shakti Mataji said to me, we may have no philosophical doubts, but we can test our faith by how we act. So do we act in a way which is Krishna conscious? And the way in which we don't act in Krishna, it shows where we need to cultivate more faith. And the way we can do that is I actually wrote down here, we can test Krishna a little bit, just like I did with the play. I said, okay, Krishna, I'm going to test you here. I'm just going to do my best. And if it fails, it fails. But then he made it a success. And that increased my faith further in Krishna. So in the same way, gradually, you can come. I hope that helps, Prabhuji.
Very much. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Wonderful answer. I've completely understood.
Mansiganga Mataji, your mic, Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining in.
Kirtika, I wanted to tell you this. Priya Govinda is our Fabian Prabhuji.
Yes,
He's with us in our group. Have you met him?
I have.
He's here this time, this trip.
No, I haven't met him.
That's why, because he was asking, is Kirtika Mataji here? I said, very much here. You haven't met her. He's been here with us since last week, actually. He came on the Friday. And to his question, sorry, what's
Kamal
Prabhuji's
Kamal
Kamal,
Prabhuji.
right? Yeah, very good answer, gradual process. However, personally, I feel because we don't want to surrender our independence. You know, we have independent nature, very difficult, you know, and our ego and our pride, that's what makes it so difficult to surrender. I'm talking from my personal experience. You know, you're given advice, do this, you know it's good for your Krishna consciousness. No, do I want to give up my pride? Do I want to give up my ego? Do I want to really give up my independence? And that's why, of course, we are where we are. But your answers are also very good and correct to the point.
Thank you so much, Mataji. That's such a wonderful point that we want to be the controller. Krishna is the controller, but we're always trying to control. And yes, very much as Mataji said, like myself, I'm full of false ego and always trying to control things. So yes, if that's why it's so difficult for us. It's almost like a block for us to really surrendering unto Krishna. But it just reminds me of once Prabhupada said, though, he said, a devotee approached Prabhupada and he said, Prabhupada, you know, I like this Krishna consciousness. I like doing all these, you know, chanting and everything, but I'm not so keen on, you know, paying obeisances. It doesn't feel comfortable to me. And so Prabhupada said to him, try it. And so the point was that you may not be comfortable being humble, but the process, as well as working on our internals, it can also work on the outside in. So even though we may not feel so humble, we may feel proud, we may want to be the controller. By practicing humility and acting in a way which is Krishna conscious, then hopefully that can also penetrate inside. So it's outside in and also inside out. And in that way, that can also gradually bring us to the point of surrender to Krishna.
Can I, you just reminded me of a very interesting story. That one dacoit, he fell in love with a princess, must be an Indian story. And then he decided, in order to get a darshan of this lady at a closer quarter, he dressed himself as a sadhu. And of course, the princess was on palanquin, and people were passing. So as a sadhu, he could actually peep in, because they take blessings and things like that. So then no, because he came as a sadhu, he was allowed to get in, and so he could see the princess. So then he decided, oh my God, just dressed up as a sadhu, I could get to the princess, and something so high and mighty. What if I really became a sadhu? What will be my position? So he, like you said, outside in, yeah? He started the external with his own motivation, but somehow it became internal, that how good it would be to be a real sadhu. So I thought I'd share this, that how external also, like you were talking about this paying obeisances, it was Gargamuni Prabhu, you know that. But Prabhupada also said, you pay obeisances, by paying obeisances, you will start doing, and we know a lot of things we have to do externally to internalize it, yeah? Haribol.
Thank you so much, Maji. Wonderful point.
So it's like fake it till you get it. Eh? Okay. Any more questions, comments, any contributions? I know we have just 4 more minutes left. Any questions, any comments? Okay, if there are no more questions, I'll hand over to Path Prabhuji. Path Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for your nice class. We are on the end of the Bhagavad Gita, and this one we're talking about the renunciation, and this is the most confidential knowledge already Krishna told, because of his devotee and a dear devotee, and he's a friend also, so that we cannot disclose all the confidential matter to everybody. So who is the more surrender, it is for him. Also Krishna told the gist it was, and you very nicely explained how we're supposed to be surrendered to Krishna, and how we're supposed to be give up all the type of varieties of religion, and only Mam Ekam, Ekam, it means only one come to the my surrender. Then Krishna will take over everything. And he's telling also the assure also, not Masucha, this don't be fear. So thank you very much, Prabhuji, for your nice and wonderful class. Also thanks devotees who joined here. I saw there are many devotees, new devotees also here. Well, so thank you. Welcome in this group. I hope you can join every day at the same time and same leave. Thanks a lot for your joining. I request all the devotees, please unmute yourself and chant Hare Krishna mantra for a glorification of His grace. Kamal Panchal Prabhuji, please join. Hare
Krishna,
Hare Krishna.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Vancha
Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
His Grace Kamal Panchal Prabhuji ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
ISKCON Eldoret Ki Jai.
Jai.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.